Hello, I am Aiden McGarrow.
And I am Graham Zander.
And today we are going to discuss 3 major events that changed our nation's landscape forever. This is our third and final episode, and we will be discussing the recent Silicon Valley collapse. I know exactly what you're thinking. Why do you have to leave so soon? And I'm sorry, but unfortunately the requirement was only 3 episodes. So we will be concluding here. So for a little background information, Trump, as president, Trump passed a law called the EGRRCPA, and this law undid some of the regulations put in place by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform, which we talked about in the 2008 financial banking crisis. It mainly raised the amount of money a bank had to have to be monitored under this law. Before Trump's laws, all banks over $50 million were regulated. After the number was $250 billion. Banks like the SVB took more risks because they were not as regulated. And now I'm going to hand it on over to Graham, and he's going to give you an explanation.
Okay, so I am going to explain why the SVB Bank failed. So first of all, the Silicon Valley Bank. We all know about Silicon Valley. It's in that tech, that science industry.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, there was a lot of money. A lot of money grew in 2020 and 2021 because of the tech boom.
A lot of money.
So a lot of money was invested into this bank. And as we know, the federal insured amount is only $250K. So over 90% of their investments were uninsured. So that meant a lot of their money in the bank was not insured by the FDIC. Now, another thing that happened is because they're the Silicon Valley Bank, they grew very rapidly. They went from only like $60 million to around $260 billion to around like $170 billion in the time from 2020 to 2022. So, what did they do with all this money, you might ask? Well, interest rates were really low in 2020 and 2021, so they invested a lot of their money in HTM securities, which are good when interest rates are super low. And basically, when they invest them in those HTM securities, they're locked in for 10 years. Now, if you didn't know this about banks, they take their money and they invest them so that they can make money. This is how they make money. But banks only keep a small amount of capital on hand, and then the rest they vest. So it costs a lot of money to take the money that they've invested and bring it back. So this is why one of the reasons a vulnerability for the SVB Bank. But as we all know, in 2022, the tech industry started to collapse. And since the SVB Bank was so heavily invested by all these science and tech companies, they got worried. And so they started to take their money out. And all these weren't insured. So they started to take a ton of their money out of the bank. And it was a lot of money because they're companies that have been making money from capital ventures. But at the same time this happened, inflation rates are rising. Now this is a perfect storm of horribleness for the SVB Bank. Now, all their money they invested in the HTM securities, that was going down because the inflation rates have risen. So basically what happened is all these people wanted to withdraw their money once they learned that, inflation rates are going down, the tech industry's failing, I need to get my money out of the bank. So a lot of this happened. So they invested all their money, and this ended up with the failure of the SVB Bank. Now, this also happened, the only similar bank with a Signature Bank, it also happened to Signature Bank because they had a similar blend of money in HTM securities and uninsured deposits. Now I'm going to hand over to Aiden, and he's going to talk more about stuff.
Wow, Graham, the Silicon Valley Bank sounds a lot like me. A lot of poor investments, poor investment management. The government, so now I'm going to talk about what the government is doing to help the Silicon Valley Bank and what they're doing in terms of regulations and laws and other stuff like that. Now, remember, this was relatively recent, so there's not a lot that has been done, and they're still in the process of doing stuff and creating reforms. So, the government is going to backstop depositors and insure their money, which inevitably means people will get their money back, but there will be losses. There was previously a cap of $250,000 guaranteed on deposits, but the government overruled that and willfully insured all deposits. The Federal Reserve is creating a new banking program called the Banking Term Funding Program, which will prioritize safeguarding institutions affected by the market instability created by the SVB failure. The Treasury Department is also providing $25 billion from its stabilization fund. Now, Graham is going to discuss our solutions, and later we'll wrap it up.
As for solutions, we believe the government needs to raise the capital reserve of banks so that they have more money to cover unexpected expenses. If the SVB Bank had had more money not invested and had more money to play around with, maybe this could have been avoided. On the other hand, I believe that banks should have more regulations, so banks have to report their capital more honestly. There's ways in which banks can get around it and report loans and securities as capital, when in actuality, it's not really current capital that they have on hand. So as we can conclude from all of this, the SVB bank failure was very bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of poor management. Yeah.
So now we would like to thank you for listening to our TED Talk about the most major bank failures in America. I hope you have really enjoyed it. I know I've had a great time, and I feel very educational, and I might pursue a career in teaching after this.
Yeah, for sure, Graham. I've taken a lot away from this, but I think the most important thing is that you should go and exercise your right to vote.
Yes, you have to vote so we can get the right politicians in there and so they can make the right laws about banks. All right, have a good day. This is Graham Zander signing off.
And Aiden Nagaro signing off.